All right, with that, let's move forward. In the agenda coming up next is an interesting panel discussion. In fact, joining us today on this platform, we will be having top neighborhood mall developers and retailers who will be throwing light on the future of neighborhood malls. So that's our topic of discussion coming up next. And I think yesterday we had some of the business leaders discuss about the consumers at tier 2, 3, 4 cities as well. Today they will also be discussing about having these neighborhood malls beyond tier 1 cities. So I think it will be a very interesting topic to deliberate, discuss, and have conversations on as such. In fact, neighborhood shopping mall is the emerging trend in retail industry in India, and I think that's the reason why we would like to hear from the business leaders who will join us this afternoon. So with that, let me go ahead and invite our speakers and the moderator for the session. To moderate this discussion, we have with us the Director of Advisory and Transaction Services, CBRE South Asia. I would like to invite Saket Amrit onto the stage, please. All right, let's have a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Our panel discussions are underway, and let's get that going. And let's invite the speakers. We have Nandini Taneja, who's a Vice President for Leasing with Reach Group. We have Hatish Kataria, who's the Chief Business Officer for HLP Group. We have Kaisar Kazi, who's heading the Retail Design and Fit Out Management at Geo World Plaza for Reliance. And we also have Nitin Gulati, who's the Assistant Vice President for Leasing CP67, joining us today. All right, Mr. Amrit, over to you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us today. What we're trying to achieve out of this session in the next 30, 40 minutes is to decode, one, the importance of neighborhood centers, and two, the long-term relevance and the sustainability of these centers, because what we're dealing with now, and I have the absolute privilege to be sharing the panel with people who are absolutely equipped to answer these questions in terms of from the design point of view, from the leasing point of view, and from the other marketing elements point of view, how important is the sustainability of these centers, because these are not large centers. You have space planning is very important, and there are other aspects which kind of comes in when you try and do these centers. And also keep in mind the immediate catchment that you're catering to, right? And having said that, as I said, the space planning is extremely important in that case. So without further ado, let me just jump right in and ask my first question to Nandini. Nandini, you run a very successful mall for the last couple of years, which is not a super center. It caters to a limited set, so to speak, set of consumers. How important would that be in that sense for you to, one, start planning it? And why would you do a neighborhood center? What are the threats that you perceive? If tomorrow there were to be a larger center coming up, how do you stay relevant? And what are the offerings that you probably have in your kitty to make it a long-term sustainable business model for yourself and for your tenants in the mall?
Thank you, Saket. Good afternoon, everyone. So neighborhood centers or markets have actually not been new to our country. What has changed really is the population, definitely, and micro markets that have actually come out of huge residential areas. And all these micro markets have to be sustainable in their own ways. They need retail, they need office, they need enough residential and all supporting elements. So looking at that and looking at how a city like Gurgaon has grown, right? Which was not planned to have a population this size of 20 lakh people. When we looked at getting into retail development, there were two land parcels that were bought. One with a vision of creating a regional center, which is a 1 million square feet retail center, and one another 5 kilometers ahead from the same center, but in a very dense micro market residential area. So that residential area today has a population of about 40,000 families that live just in 4 kilometers radius. And these are people who are working in corporates, again, around, which are large corporates like Genpact, Google, having base right around there. Now, what do they need? They need easy, convenient, accessible markets. They need the right tenants. They need the right marketing and engagement. So we opened 3 roads 2 years back, and the vision was very clear that we want to have a convenience center at a very enhanced engagement design perspective. So, the kind of leasing and the placement of brands, manage, the footfall, and having like an anchor in every corner to enhance the footfall in all the floors. We also looked at various angles like engagement. So today, of course, large shopping malls definitely have a lot of benefits. But having said that, it is a full day activity, right? You don't go to a shopping mall for 20 minutes to 1 hour. So we picked up on that perspective. But along with that, we gave them the engagement they look forward to by having live events, by having carnivals, food shows, comedy shows. These are engagements that keep you going even on a weekend. So it's a market at your doorstep. You walk in easy for your conveniences, but enjoy the experiences in an outdoor controlled environment.
Absolutely. Very valid point. And, let me go to Nitin with my next question. Of course, Nandi's center is running for some time. You are coming up with a center which will be operational in another 6-8 months' time, if I get my timeline correct. How important, in your sense, would it be to get the right categories in those centers? Because one, your space is not 1,000,000 square feet where you can keep churning, getting the newer brands, and also you're not catering to a 10 square kilometer radius. You're catering to maybe a smaller sort of area in that sense. But tomorrow, if you were to get another new brand, that poses a challenge for you, right? Because you don't have the space to relocate people. So how do you approach that in terms of specific categories, or you look at the customers first and then decide what needs to be done, or you just say, okay, these are the brands that kind of worked elsewhere, and probably I can look at, in a similar catchment area as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, when we designed the center, it's a 1,000,000 square feet center, but it's a mixed-use development, which doesn't only have retail. It has got a grade A offices, as well as we are coming up with a premium large hotel in the center. So that is the thought behind designing the center. Of course, when it comes to retail, it is like close to 45% of the total portfolio. And then the retail becomes a neighborhood. Our idea was, we have always, initially, the strategy was to look for all the brands, but then after that we realized that it is the performance which is going to work well for the neighborhood centers rather than the perception. Of course, we are keeping a certain portfolio of the perception-oriented brands as well, which are the good ones to drive people in. But our focus has always been on the performance-oriented brands. And we are not only focusing on the performance, we are also focusing on the convenience aspect as well. So this is what is going to be driving in factor for our property.
Very valid point. Kaiser, you have been part of the mall design / the store design business for the longest time, and you've seen the journey, how malls have now evolved in the country for the last 20 years or so. In your sense, when you design a neighborhood mall, when you only have space to do that for various factors, maybe you don't want to do a large center, even if you can, because of there are different variables to it. What are the key factors that you need to keep in mind versus a large center? Because you have worked on all the spectrum and continue to do so. In your sense, if you were to tick 3 boxes, what would those could be 4 boxes, 5 boxes as well. So what are if I'm designing a neighborhood center, what are the key aspects that I should look at from the design point of view, so that it's very easy for the consumers to come and shop and stay relevant in the long term? Because I think that's the key question here.
So while designing a community mall, it's very important to have the circulation right. First, you have to do the proper zoning, what you're going to have there, and accordingly you have to design the circulation. Because in a close-by community, you have all sorts of people coming in. You have physically challenged people also coming in there. You have to keep that in mind. You have a lot of children there, what are the activities you are planning for them? Is there a good, performance area there? How have you placed your elevators, escalators, staircases? What are the services you are planning? How you are zoning it out? Where is your food court? Where is your theater? And you have to drive the people around, in a way that, every store gets a maximum visibility and, approach. Because if you don't design it well, somebody's in a corner, no footfall in that area, it doesn't really do good to the store there. Yeah, so you have to give equal footing to everyone and a lot of attention to these things. Apart from that, you need to have better air conditioning, you have, lighting, and, housekeeping is also a very important factor, to that. But design-wise, as I said, circulation is the key, because if you score there, you scored a lot in a good mall. And if you see the successful malls, around, you can see, how well they have been planned. The location of the anchor, location of the food court, the location of the performance areas. So they are in a such a way where the people keep on moving around. Every store gets a good visibility, and people are moving in and out. Sales happen well. So I think these are some of the key points.
Sure, thank you. Let me ask a follow-up question to Hatish. You're doing 2 centers now in Punjab, and both of them are quintessentially neighborhood centers, even though the positionings are slightly different for both of them. But coming from Kaiser's point, that's very important to have these circulation aspects, and where you put who is very important, not just from the neighborhood perspective, but from a larger retail point of view as well. The center that you are designing, and I've seen the design, I mean, it's very open, indoor, outdoor, a lot of performance areas, etc., are built in already. What are the thought behind that? I mean, did you think, what exactly what Kaiser was saying, or there's some other thoughts involved in that as well, when you designed that? So.
Good afternoon, everyone. When we were designing these malls, the basic idea was to create something where the convenience is the most important part. The 3 things which were important was the location, second was the product mix, and third thing which was the brand mix. How the brands will come, how the catchment will come, and how we will able to take advantage of the consumers who will come and they have a good experience there. So first, locations are very important, but only location is not something which will help you in running the mall in a very successful way. You need to create a particular brand mix and a product mix. For that, we have 2 malls which we are planning, which we will be handing over to fitment by this March. One is in the CBD of Mohali. It's a large 7-acre plot, mixed development. So we have retail, we have offices, we have an F&B, we have cinemas, and we have a small hotel also. So in that sense, the idea is to create a premium brand where the catchment area is a very, very rich catchment area where the spending capacity is very high. So we are placing all premium brands there. And the second mall which is coming up is in the Zirakpur area, which is a periphery of the Chandigarh region, around 5 kilometers from the Chandigarh. It's a very, very thickly populated middle income, upper middle income area. So we have creating a factory outlet mall there. So basically, so the product mix is being created to see how the catchment is and how they will be able to benefit from that. Another thing about which Kazi talked about was the most important part was the movement of the people, how they will move, how the visibility will be there, what is the convenience level. So we took care of all these things, and we have the specialized people on our board who are taking care of all these things. The idea of developing these 2 things were to create a landmarks on those areas, which will cater to the neighborhood market, as well as because it is the Zirakpur Mall is on the highway. So a lot of people from Punjab and Haryana, they travel. So we are taking care of those passing population also.
Nandi, if I were to ask you again, another leading question here. Your mall doesn't have a multiplex, right? And the old adage would be that, you need a multiplex to pull people. Then there are other tenants who get more excited about it because there's a surety of footfall. When you decide to not do it, it could be from the design point of view, it could be, I'm sure there's some other thought behind it as well. Despite not having a multiplex in the center, you continue to drive people in, you continue, your per square feet sales are rising, and there's no dearth of people not finding things that they would want in a neighborhood center. How did you solve for that? And do you think that was a risk to not do a multiplex and still were confident that you'll still be able to pull this off in that sense.
Absolutely. So we took a call. We do have an office tower linked to this where we're doing a large co-working space. Multiplex, of course, has its advantages in terms of pulling footfall. But when you look at the overall scenario now, what are the alternate entertainment options available? In India, it's pretty much just dining in multiplex. But nowadays, FEC, kids play zones, and the regular activities that we do, that pulls out the daily crowd. You look at any soft play zone in any of the cities, there are at least 3 to 4 on an average birthday parties that happen. Now, what are they getting us? They're getting us mother and children footfall. Sometimes fathers, of course, come along. But we've been evaluating alternate entertainment options. Yes, we will be doing a large FEC soon to announce. Apart from this, we've also tied up with an outdoor movie experience. So when, during the winter months, we do regular outdoor screenings. So these are alternate avenues that one can evaluate.
So what you're essentially saying is, as long as you can engage and understand the customer, there's always people coming back regularly, and it sort of solves both the problems for you.
Absolutely, because in India, we don't have too many cultural shows happening. When you travel abroad, you look at the entertainment options are immense. You have parks, you have shows, comedy, stand-ups. You also have, circus, a lot of few things that happen. But here, it's restricted to dining and a multiplex. And so if you give that option to the customer, they love it. They want to come and attend that. So that's what we've been evaluating and working on that. And I think it's going well with this concept.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hatish, we're discussing offline. Nandi runs a center which is in the heart of Gurgaon. You are going to run a center which is in Mohali and Zirakpur. Do you think there's a relevance slightly at a higher level for these neighbor centers in tier 2, 3 city markets compared to, say, a metro town where you already have so many choices, not just cinema or maybe shopping, but beyond that, whereas a tier 2, 3 centers probably would have more aspirational value and a lot thicker catchment to really cater to, where you don't need to do a very large center and run the risk of those kind of investment and just do a neighborhood center, cater to the aspiration as well as the convenience, and that kind of works slightly better than maybe a metro town. Your take on that would be, and I would after that jump to Nitin on the same question.
Now, in the smaller cities, what is more important is in tier 2 and tier 3. The family values are very, very well connected. There you will find larger family sizes. So we are creating things where we are able to give options to all age groups, from a toddler to a senior citizen. Everybody should be taken care of, because when a family comes there, they don't come here for they're not a nuclear family. Only youngsters come, or they come for shopping. They want a whole experience into it. Second thing which is important is the catchment is very big for these small centers in tier 2, tier 3 cities, because the smaller town people come there. They come with their families, spend whole day there. They go to cinema, they enjoy food. F&B is a very, very important factor there. Everywhere it is the most important factor. Even its share has gone up from 13% to 30% now in the mall spaces. From a third floor, it has come down to ground floors now. So these things are very, very important in tier 2, tier 3 city, where you are able to engage the whole family. And it becomes a destination. So FEC centers in real sense we are creating there. Neighborhood malls is there, but it has to have all the flavors of this thing.
Very fair point. Nitin, if I were to ask you the same question.
Well, I believe, like Hatish said, F&B and entertainment are the driving factors for any property. And of course, the pie of the F&B and entertainment in a shopping center has gone up. And so is in our case. And I must say that tier 2 and tier 3 town people are also widely traveled. It's not that they are only restricted to their own town. They keep on traveling abroad and to the bigger towns in the country as well. So they are well versed with the brands. They are well versed with what is happening in the world. We are in the digital era. So people are very well connected. And I think the behavioral pattern of a tier 2 town people is almost similar as a bigger town. And like I said, we have the city that our center is in, which is Mohali. It is a growing city. What we are projecting is in the next decade is going to be for this city. A lot of people are coming in and settling in the city. Thirdly, we ourselves have seen a lot of absorption in the office space also. We have clients like absorbing close to 50,000, 60,000 square feet of space. So these
That
are the
creates
ones.
a whole new sort of catchment in itself.
Yes. So, and everything is complementing each other. And they are creating, I would say, our center would create close to 3,000 to 4,000 new odd jobs for the city, wherein new people will come in and settle. And there are people, and there's a lot of reverse migration happening. People are wanting to be close to their hometowns. All the ones which were going to the bigger towns, so they are coming back. They want to come back. And these are the ones which are widely traveled. They know everything well. So while designing the mix of a neighborhood center in a tier 2 town, I believe it's going to be the similar.
That's a very interesting bit of information that the reverse migration bit, and because of maybe pandemic, people are comfortable working with anywhere or that. Hatish, I believe you wanted to weigh in here.
With this work from home setup for the last 2 years after the pandemic, a lot of changes have come into the behavior of the people. The mindset has changed. That, as rightly said, the mindset has changed. The buying pattern has changed. Even they are investing more on, on their outfits and other parts. And even F&B has taken a lot of, uptake because of these things.
Fair. You know what I'll do now is we'll go around the table with one very pertinent question. Neighborhood center, despite the size, it caters to fills a very different gap in that catchment. But there's always, you look over the shoulder and think, what if tomorrow a large size center comes up? Because the market is growing, because there's more recession coming up, and as Zitin mentioned, office space is coming up that generates a whole new catchment area. How do you stay relevant from that size? Because you have your own constraints. Plus, a larger center coming up with maybe a newer set of offerings. How do you stay relevant is what my underlining question is. Nandini, if I can start with you on this.
So I think we have a clear example of having both the centers around.
That's why I went to you first.
A large regional center and a neighborhood complex. But yes, I feel that, in fact, the catchment where Three Roads is present, there are 3 other malls that are planned. The way, the population grows as more corporates come in, these centers end up complementing each other. But what is important is for the developer to be totally involved with the tenant performances, to look at the performance, the trading densities, and constantly, sort of evaluating and adapting to the newer change. The customer comes to a certain price point, right? So today we do have a McDonald's drive-through. We will, and that is planned keeping in mind, the growing population, the growing needs, and that's a long-term tenant to have, right? So have your stable, large anchors in place, which will stay with you, which will always drive footfall, and there'll always be a churn of the brands that need a bit of enhancement, right? So for example, a category that is performing well, we get the aspirational brand of the same category to get the customer hooked on to a higher price point. Sure. So yes, a constant evolution, constant enhancement, the service level standards. So I see over the years, of course, one tends to compromise on the service level standards. But nowadays, retail centers, it's a service industry, right? So they expect the same level of experience as a 5-star hotel. So from the time you enter the complex, to the parking, to the toilets, and small things that enable the customer to spend time, having a baby diaper changing station, for example, a medical room, a wheelchair assistance for the older people. It really keeps getting the customer back.
What you're basically saying is, even if you have a smaller center,
Yeah.
all the sanity checks, all the hygiene factors
Absolutely.
stay as the same as if you're doing a larger center.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of a recipe for a long-term
For
sustainability
a
of a
long
neighborhood
term, and
center.
of course, an enhancement on the brands.
Of course,
Keeps
of course.
happening constantly.
Hatish, your take, please.
We are developing the two centers which we're developing are not small, but they're not very big. It's a 1 million square feet each. So we believe that both the neighborhood as well as the bigger centers have their own role to play. The product mix and how to place them, what are their target segment, these two will define the things. The only thing which will differentiate between a successful mall and a mall which is not so successful is the engagement part and the management part. If you manage the things well and you know whom to hit at what price range, what should be the product mix, I think both the formats are there to stay, and even from the mom and pop stores are also there to stay for long.
You agree with Hatish Kaiser in your experience, because you have also worked in various assets which you would find relevant examples like these. Both sides.
So typically, a community mall fits into 2 lakh square feet to 6 lakh square feet internationally. Indian context, it may change a bit, but if you have a good mix of retailers there, having a good anchor store, FMCG, a multiplex, and good bouquet of retailers, it would work, because this is a go-to place. Not necessarily it is an inspirational place, or you can say this is something, experience center, but it can strive to be an experience center at the same time, because people require quality. People are going to go for quality. If you don't give them that, they will move to the mall which is slightly away. Distance is really not a matter to them. You want to take the advantage of the distance, then give them what they want. Study the demographics around. Then you have a lot of data. What is the spending power of the people around you? What brands you need to get them there? What is their aspiration value? So if you work on that and study the data well, and give that bouquet to the customers, I think it should work. It always works.
Nitin, your thoughts?
Well, I believe if the neighborhood center sets the basics right, which is security, safety, hygiene, brand mix, parking, sense of arrival, if all the basics are right, the neighborhood center is not going to go anywhere. No matter what, if a large center comes or any other neighborhood center comes, if you are maintaining the standards, if the sense of arrival is there, if the convenience of the shopper, customer is there, so it is going to stay. And like everybody says, that if the focus of the developer is maintaining the center well, so then it has a very long way to go.
So what I'm hearing is essentially is that you don't necessarily have to compete with a large center, presuming they're coming. Even if they are, as long as your box is ticked with regards to maintenance, the parking, the convenience, the marketing aspect, there's no threat per se, because what you're essentially doing is filling the gap in that particular segment of that market. Fair enough. Another question, Nitin, since we are on to you, we'll start with you. There's always, and there's multiple examples of these kind of centers which developed in the past, and they continue to be developed, which were smaller center, and they were sold in the piecemeal basis to various investors. And most of the tenants or the retailers may not have the best experience going into those centers, because, of course, maintenance were not up to the mark, or there are various other factors, right? We continue to do that because it's very practical to do it. You have to look at your books and your cash flows, etc. These are key elements to it. But now, because we have slightly evolved than how we were 20 years back or 15 years back, and we still have to monetize a bit for the sake of cash flow. How do you ensure that our mall, the maintenance or the operation doesn't take a hit? Is there anything that you build for when you maybe go to your investor set, or how do you really solve for that?
So, well, I believe the solution to this is that the leasing rights is going to be with the developer or the one which is running the property, and I would say that majority of the inventory should be with the developer. I understand that there are, for the cash flows, a developer might have to go for a strata selling. But if the developer is able to manage the majority stake because of its vested interest, as well as the tag, the name which is of the developer is always attached to the property who has built the property. So a developer has, for the investors, developer has to go for a long-term leasing rights with them. I would say for a minimum period of 20 years. So if the horizon is for 20 years, so then I believe even if it is strata sold and the leasing rights is with the developer, so it is going to do fairly well. It is going to do the same as what a pure lease model does.
Nandan, you agree with what Nitin is saying because you already are in some sense working on that model.
Yeah, I totally agree. Leasing control, the center control in terms of CAM management facility is very, very crucial. And also to have investors who understand the rental model is also very important because there is a huge gap in the capital values and the rental yields that one gets, right? So if you have your expectation right, with the right set of investors and a control, one should be able to lease it. And
Atish, you agree with what Nandini is saying because going forward, I think one of the models that you are also working on.
The paramount factor is that the leasing right should be with the person who's running the mall. This is the most important part, but as everybody agrees that you have to look at the books also, you have to ensure the cash flow. Now the investors are become mature enough, they understand the leasing, how it is going to be, the investment is going for a long time and they are expecting regular returns. So that basic, if you filter it at the time of selling and you keep the leasing rights, I think this is a doable model.
Fair. I think that's a very important point that you made, that now investor set is also evolved and they understood that their long-term focus is to get a higher return on their investment and not necessarily running a center because that's not their forte anymore.
We get a lot of inquiries where the investor says that we want a branded this thing, we don't want to run it. We are the financial stakeholders only. And they are very clear that they don't have any role in operations or running or anything. They are clear investors, they want to invest and they get the regular returns or capital appreciation over a period of time. So this is a very, very good option which has come up for the investors.
Fantastic. I think that's a very encouraging thought at this point in time. If that's happening, I think everybody will be benefited out of that. That's the time, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. If I were to really sum it up, the neighborhood malls are not going anywhere. I think what they're essentially doing is to provide a very, very important service in filling that need gap, which a larger center may or may not be able to do it for those immediate catchment. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us, and have a great day. Thank you.